Welcome to the Fish House Nation podcast. I'm Chris Larson. He's Al Escobedo. We're talking ice fishing today, and the big thing we're going to be talking about is rattle reels. Some people love them, some people hate them, some people love to hate them, but they're a tool, just like anything else. I think they are a tool that can help you catch more fish, and if you're a wheelhouse person, of course. I mean, you're fishing all the time, and that's kind of the dream, right? When you get a wheelhouse, everyone who buys a wheelhouse buys it with the intention of, I can fish 24 hours a day now when I'm ice fishing.
Exactly.
Because you've always got lines down even when you're sleeping. And I would say it probably isn't as productive as I think a lot of people think it can be, but it does put you in a game. And you and I have both, been startled and awakened by the sound of that rattle. And I got to tell you, there's some mornings where that thing goes off and you're like, you get it. Yeah. But there's other days where that thing goes off and you pop up out of bed and can't wait to see it's on the other end.
There's those nights where they don't stop, and now you're really fighting for who has to go get them. Yeah. Those are few and far between, at least in my experience, but they do exist. We have been there and have seen that too. Yeah. But rattle reels are an awesome tool. I mean, whether it's just to keep you in the game while you're sleeping, or keep you in the game while you're cooking and eating dinner, or you're having a bunch of buddies out playing cards, just having a few drinks, it just keeps you fishing at all times. It's a great tool. It allows you, we all got a lot of buddies that aren't really big fishermen, but they want to come out and experience the ice fishing life. And a lot of the time we know that, they'll jig the rod for a couple minutes and then they're gone. That's another great tool or opportunity. Show them how to set that up, and then they can just putz around and do their thing in the shack. It's a good tool for all different options. And, if you got kids and the wife with you, that's even that more many opportunities you can have down. If they're not actively jigging or whatever, you can say, hey, we're going to set you up a rattle reel, and at least if it goes off, you can go catch one of those. They don't have to really worry about fishing per se, but they are fishing.
Yeah, so. I didn't really even think about that. That's actually a really good point, in that you can set this line up and you can tell a kid that's yours. And then they don't have to actually do any work other than when there's a fish on there. But yeah, it gives them an opportunity to say that they were fishing, even though you don't have to worry about going and, trying to fix a tangle or having some kind of craziness happen. Like, it just kind of gets them in the game. You can put a name on it for them, like, hey, this is your line, and they can feel some ownership and have an opportunity to go, hey, I caught this fish. That's actually a really good point, in that it gets them in a game with a rod that's actually, like, they can feel like it's theirs. So I like that idea. I didn't think about that. You've got the youngins at your house, so I'm sure you're always thinking about that.
Yep, it's an easy way to keep them fishing while they're off playing in the snow, doing whatever. And then when they hear that rattle go off, it's they get that same excitement as the tip up going off. They get all jumpy and jittery and go running, go get after it. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about setting up your rattle reels. I like to set mine up pretty similar to the way that you'd set up a tip up. I would say the big advantage to rattle reels is that they're inside the house, so you don't get that line stiffness that you'd get if you've got lines sitting outside all the time. And for that reason, I kind of moved away from the Dacron stuff and and you have less memory, especially with the catch cover rattlesnake reels. You've got a bigger spool there, and that spool is generally, one turn's about a foot. But some of those rattle reels that are out there, the spool's pretty small. You get a lot of memory in your line. With the catch cover one, you've got a pretty big spool. You don't have that memory in the line. So I've kind of gone towards moving towards that fly fishing line. And the other thing I'll say with the fly fishing line that I like over the Dacron is that it doesn't tangle as much. And also it's color coded. So maybe you've got some setup with some heavier fluoro for northern, and you have some with some lighter line for, maybe you like to, we've used rattle reels in perch spots before too. So if you're fishing perch, you want something a little lighter, maybe you've got, some 12-pound fluoro on for northern, and you want to run 6-pound for walleyes, just different color fly line, and you know which rattle reel is which and what it goes for. So that's another advantage to that.
And if it's something that you don't want to have multiple rattle reels set up as well, I mean, you're generally tying off to a swivel and putting some sort of leader, whether it's mono, whether it's whatever. So it leaves you with a lot of options there too, where if you're a guy that only wants to have 1 or 2 reels, you just cut off at the swivel, pull on a new line and tie up, and you're good to go. So it's a super easy thing. And that's the other thing I was going to mention when we were talking about uses that I forgot to mention is it's a cheap dead stick too. If you're a guy that's out walleye fishing and you don't want to dump a bunch of money into rods, and you're worried about if you got a long far hike that you don't want to worry about breaking another rod, the rattlesnake is really compact, packs away really nice. You're not really going to get tangles with it. They're just a great option to haul out and use in those situations to just avoid tangling and breaking. They're lightweight. They're just an easy tool as another option for that situation. Whether you're in a hub, a flip over, you can get the different style mounts and modify them to make it work, whether you mount it to the hub itself, whether you mount it to the tub of the sled. There's a lot of great options for it. It's a great tool. I think it's really overlooked by a lot of people. I mean, you're talking a rattle reel, you pay $24.99, I believe the rattlesnakes are currently. $29.99. Sorry, I was off. $29.99, and you got a great piece of equipment that's, like you said, once you throw on that fly line, it's virtually tangle free in spooling operation. It's this big that you're throwing in a bucket, throwing in a bag, easy to carry around. It's just another great option to keep things simple if you're, one of those guys that wants to simplify the whole setup.
And yeah, I didn't really even think about that, but yeah, you've got that, if you're out in your sled and you've got the quick disc hooked up to your sled, it's a lot better than having a dead stick go down the hole. So it's going to be more secure. It's going to hold that thing in place for you in that situation, but also a lot more secure in your fish house, though.
And you have the audible noise of the bite, where with a dead stick, you got to be really paying attention. We've all had them. If you fish with a dead stick, you've either lost a rod or been very close when that 25-inch northern comes flying by and rips that thing down the hole and you're diving to catch it. Well, with a rattle reel, it's totally secure. You're going to hear that bite and you'll have it set properly for that situation, where it's just a little bit easier, I think.
Lets them take the bait. And that's another thing, like if you are going to run your rod, don't sleep on the catch cover rod holder as well. You can do that, but yeah, you don't want to be in that spot where you're sitting there and there goes your rod across the kitchen counter or whatever, and down in the hole it goes. That's not a fun situation, especially if you're fishing with a nice, $120, $130, $140 rod out there. So,
well, the thing too, I mean, when you're talking about rattle reels and dead sticks in a hard houses are they're very comfortable and nice to fish in, but let's be honest, there's not a ton of space for walking around and moving around. So when you got rods laying on this counter, rod laying on this counter, rod sitting off that bed over there because you got 2 guys fishing, and those lines can get tangled a lot better or a lot easier. Where when you're setting up your rattle reels, the first thing I do when I get a house is I go in there and I picture myself how I'm going to set it up when I'm fishing. And how we're going to sleep, and then you pick the locations where those rattle reels are going to be the most out of the way. And with these rattlesnake rattle reels, with the ability of that flexible arm, you can really move them around and keep everything very, very controlled and eliminate those chances of the kid walking across the shack, tangling a foot on your fishing rod, dropping the rod down the hole, dealing with all that hassle.
Labrador tail.
I got one of those to deal with too. He's usually right underneath my feet, so it's usually not knocking that kind of stuff over. He's usually knocking everything out of my hands.
Yeah, you brought up a good point. That's one thing. I do have a catch cover, safety cover here, and a lot of people, there's this weird kind of groove thing at the top of it, and when I'm at shows, I get asked all the time, like, what is that for? Why is there an indentation there? And if you want to get your rattle reel even closer to the hole, the rattlesnake reel actually pops right into that. That's what that's built for, is for our rattle reel to go in there. So if you do have dogs running around the house, if you've got a lot of youngsters, or maybe you've just got a brother-in-law that gets into the Janufka a little too much, gets tangled up in lines, this will get that rattle reel right up on top of your safety cover and keep that line out of trouble. So whenever you're looking at rattle reels or looking at safety covers, think of it as a system. How are we going to fish with this, and how does it work, and why would I want this over that? Well, I think there's a huge amount of advantages to using the rattlesnake reel, but just being able to plug it in with our safety cover is just, I mean, there's nothing else like it as far as being able to get that rattle reel just tight to the hole. So it's really, really helpful, and just makes it way easier to use. Let's talk a little bit about just fishing with the rattle reels in general. We talked about using it as a line for someone who maybe isn't quite as focused on fishing, but just using it at night and like where to set up for those things. And I would say generally, if you can be in just areas where fish are cruising at night, whether that's a flat, whether that's a saddle. There's been places where I've fished where I'm like, why are we sitting out here in 25 feet of water overnight? But there's fish around and they're biting, but get yourself in a place where, it's likely to have an evening bite or a nighttime bite. Get those lines down. Depending on what you're fishing for, I like to put something on with some glow. I like to put something on, I really like a sucker minnow, or not a sucker minnow, but a fathead minnow, something that can stay moving around at night, and I don't have to worry about changing it out every 2 hours, because that thing's hopefully going to be down. Hopefully I can sleep usually when I'm in a fish house, I don't sleep for 8 hours, but 5-6 hours.
That's not a bad goal, but I think I would rather go into it with the goal of being up all night catching fish. It's usually about halfway through that is when you hit the point where you're like, okay, now I'm done.
Mm-hmm. You ever throw in the towel where you're like, you know what, we don't need to put this down anymore?
There have been a couple nights where we have pulled up fish and said, all right, we're done for the night. Tie them up, we're going to bed, lock everything away. That's very few and far between, but we have had a few of those nights in the shack, definitely.
I think a really good strategy is, let's say you're ready to crash and it's midnight. Go to bed, set your alarm for maybe 3:30 or 4, drop those lines down at 3:30 or 4, and then go back to bed. And usually like when that sun is just starting to peek over the horizon is when things start getting going. I feel like I've had a lot of like 6 a.m. rattles that way, where just, in the wintertime, sun coming up a little bit later, just starting to kind of get going, the bite takes off, and that's a fun way to wake up.
That's definitely a great option to do it that way. Having it set up in those high bite window time periods is definitely a great idea, whether it's even in the evening, right at that, if you don't have them out all day long, throw them out for that couple hours where them crappies start biting really good, or where the walleyes start biting really good, and you just have that other line in there.
Another good way to wake up is the sound and smell of bacon frying.
That's probably my favorite way to wake up in the ice house.
But you brought up a point there, and it's something that I don't think people talk about really enough, is that, I think when we think rattle reels, a lot of times we think about northern fishing or walleye fishing, but they can be really good tools with crappies. I've caught a lot of bluegills on rattle reels. I've caught perch on rattle reels. So just setting that tension really light, and you put a wax worm on there and drop it down, and you can catch anything on a rattle reel. Just gotta mess with your settings a little bit, if you will.
Mess with your settings, mess with your setup. Just use a little bit lighter line on your leader, different size baits. You can target, really any species that lives in the lake will eat a rattle reel too. It's just another option that's out there. Like I said, for me, my biggest thing with them is it's a great option that just consolidates and makes things less hassle, less chances of tangles, less chances of kids getting wrapped up. They're nice and contained. That's what I really like about fishing with rattle reels.
Yeah. The other thing I'll say is something that, I don't know if people do enough when they're setting up their rattle reels or when they're setting up their tip ups is have your electronics with you so you can get that set up right where you want it to be. You can really pinpoint it instead of just kind of guessing where it is. And the other thing I'll say is that as ice anglers, we're often getting our setup to relate to the bottom. We're putting stuff on the bottom because that's where we catch a lot of fish, or close to the bottom, or the bottom third of the water column. But when it comes to rattle reels and even tip ups, like just under the ice is often a really good spot. You have those predator fish that are often just kind of cruising along just under the surface of the ice looking for crippled fish that, aren't making it and struggling to survive. They tend to float to the top, and you have those predators cruising those areas. So don't be afraid to put a line, especially if you're sleeping. You're not making a lot of noise. You're not moving around, spooking stuff. It's quiet. Don't feel bad about putting something 2-3 feet under the ice.
And that's another good point is if you do have 4 or 5 guys in the house, set them all at a couple different depths to get different reads. You'd be surprised. A lot of people don't realize how many times the walleyes will suspend and feed, and over 30 feet of water, they might be 15 feet up. Fish do weird different things, and if you have those different options, you might learn something, and then you can adjust the rest to copy it and make the magic happen.
That's the main thing. I think when you do that, just say, Al, I want you to set yours all up at 15. Jim, you're going to set yours up just a few feet under the water. I'm going to set under the ice. I'm going to set mine up on the bottom. And if yours are going off, well, guess what? We're going to move our lines closer to where you're at. So that's the other thing. A lot of guys will do that. They'll set them up at different spots, but no idea when a fish goes off. Hey, how far was that down? Well, I don't remember where we set this one up. So figure out a way to keep track of where everybody's lines are. So if you have, if they're going off all the time in a certain range, well then move all your rods to that range. So.
Yep, and what I do for marking the depths is similar to what I do for tip-ups is I use those tiny little marker bobbers. You drop down your transducer, you drop down the bait to where you want it. It depends how lazy I'm feeling at the time when I set it up. Sometimes I'll reach all the way down, put that bobber right on the top of the water. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I'll set it right at the top of the hole. You just got to remember where it is. So when a fish takes it, you just put that bobber right back to where it was, and you should be right. You're still going to check it with your flasher. You got it right there. You might as well. Mm-hmm. But you're going to just put that bobber right back to the top of the water, and you should be right set back to where you were. And that also help the guys you're with be able to make sure that when they're going back to where you were, because if you're catching fish but you're not doing something consistent, you're constantly changing, they might be trying to copy you, and for whatever reason they might be a little further down, something might be a little bit different, and it might just not work. So using a little visual representation for that depth is a good backup, you always get those bites where they come in and they'll grab it and they'll pull it 2 or 3 feet and then for whatever reason spit it, swim away. It gives you that visual representation of that bait sitting just down under the hole, not moving. You give it time, it's not moving. It's just another tool to use when fishing with the rattle reel.
I love going to get the rattle reel and look in there and the bobber's gone. You're like, good things are about to happen.
Yep.
So, awesome, Al. Appreciate it. Anything else before we let everybody go here?
I think we covered it all. I think if you're looking for another tool to get out on the ice and really low maintenance, easy tool to operate, check out the rattle reels from Catch Covers. They're a great option with that snaking arm that you can twist and turn and really focus on setting it. Whether you want to set it dead center of that hole, use your safety cover so you can walk around not worrying about falling in. Check all that stuff out. They're great tools to have out in the shack.
And the other thing I'm going to say, I don't think there's another rattle reel out there that has a lifetime warranty on it.
That's a big deal.
And there might be some here or there. I don't know of another one that's lifetime warranty. It's made in Minnesota. I know there's guys that are making stuff out of the garage, and that's cool. And I really like the American-made part of it, but American-made, lifetime warranty, no questions asked, lifetime warranty at Catch Cover. So check it out. It's the Rattlesnake Reel, and you can find it at Catch Cover dealers or at catchcover.com. He's Al Escobedo. I'm Chris Larson. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next time.